All right, welcome. Today we're going to dive into a choice that every single Laravel developer has to make. One that seems tiny, but trust me, has some pretty huge consequences down the line. Are you team nullable or are you team default zero? So picture this. You're building out a new feature, you add a new column to your database, and it's optional. Let's say it's something like a unit type for a product. Some products might not have one. So what do? Do you tell the database, hey, if there's no value, just save an empty piece of text? Or do you tell it the value is truly genuinely missing, that it's null? To really make the right call here, we've got to understand what we're actually telling our database to do. I mean, they look kind of similar in our migration file, but under the hood, yeah, they are worlds apart. Okay, so on the left, we've got the default empty approach. This is basically telling our migration, hey, create this column and it cannot be empty. But if a value isn't provided, just stick an empty string in there for me. On the right, nullable is way more explicit. It's telling the database, you know what? It is totally fine if this column has no value whatsoever. And this is where it gets really interesting, right? Look at how this plays out. With default, the actual SQL column is defined as not null. And what gets stored is literally an empty string, double quotes. That means your PHP code will always get a string back. But with nullable, the column allows null, and it stores a special null marker, which is the database's way of saying no value. And that means your PHP code needs to be ready to handle either a string or null. So that fundamental difference, it leads to what I like to call the empty box problem. It sounds kind of harmless, but it's a really subtle, sneaky issue with data integrity that can lead to some seriously confusing bugs and super messy queries later on. To really get this, let's just forget about code for a second. Let's use an analogy. Imagine your database is a massive warehouse, and every piece of data you have is stored in a box on a shelf. So the default emptying approach, that's like putting an actual, physical, empty cardboard box on the shelf. If someone comes along and asks, hey, is there a box for a unit type? The answer is, yep, there is. But then they open it, and there's nothing inside. So now what? Is it empty on purpose, or did someone just forget to put the item in? It's totally ambiguous. But nullable, on the other hand, that's like having no box on the shelf at all. The empty space is the message. It clearly and intentionally signals, hey, this attribute just doesn't apply here. There's zero confusion, no ambiguity whatsoever. Okay, so an empty box versus no box, why should we care, right? Well, you care the second you need to actually find your data. The way you ask the warehouse manager or, your database for these items is completely different. If you use defaults empty, you have to write a query that specifically looks for a value that is an empty string. You're telling the database, hey, go find me all the records that literally have a value of empty text. You're searching for the empty boxes. But to find the records where a value is truly missing or not applicable, the industry standard proper way to do it is to use isNull. This query looks for the absence of a value. And here's the kicker. This query will completely 100% miss all those records with an empty string because an empty string isn't an absence of a value, it is a value. So this creates a huge mess, right? A major inconsistency. So how do we fix it? How do we get that beautiful database purity that nullable gives us, but without causing all those annoying property of non-object errors in our front-end code? Here it is. This is probably the most important takeaway of this whole explainer. You should never, ever compromise the integrity of your database just to make your front-end life a little bit easier. Your database's job is to store the truth, period. The job of making that data look pretty or safe for display belongs to your application. And this is the elegant, professional, two-step solution. It's so simple. First, you keep your database honest. You always use nullable for optional data. Always. And second, you use this absolutely brilliant feature in Laravel called a model accessor to safely transform the data on its way out. And it's this simple. I mean, look at this. It's one line of code in your eloquent model. You add an accessor, and it intercepts the value as it's being pulled from the database. That double question mark thing, that's the null coalescing operator. It's just a slick way of saying, hey, if the value coming from the database is null, just give me an empty string instead. Otherwise, give me the value. Your database stays pure, and your front end always gets a safe, predictable string. It's the best of both worlds. So let's zoom out for a second. Why does this really matter in the long run? I promise this isn't just about being a database purist. This has real practical benefits for the health and longevity of your entire project. First off, you get correct data semantics. You're just telling the truth. Null means I don't know or this doesn't apply. An empty string means I know and the value is empty text. Second, your queries become standard. They become more efficient. And finally, and this is a big one, you're future-proofing your application. Let's say one day you need to turn that column into a foreign key relationship. Well, a foreign key can be nullable, but it can never be an empty string. You're keeping your options open. So really, if you take just one thing away from all of this, let it be this. Stop lying to your database. It's a powerful tool, and it was designed specifically to handle the absence of data perfectly using null. Let it do its job. Handle the presentation stuff in your application code where it belongs. So the next time you're writing a migration and you come to that optional column, just pause for a second. Ask yourself, what is the real truth of this data? Am I storing an ambiguous, empty box? Or am I clearly signaling that there is no box at all? Trust me, your future self is going to thank you for making the right choice.